Good morning, everyone. My name is Susan Spader, and welcome to Dale Carnegie's Jumpstart. This is a time every week when we get together to have a discussion around topics that we are all dealing with or struggling with or aware of. And if this is your first time with us, welcome. We are so glad to have you with us today. And if this is not your first time with us, welcome back. We are so delighted that you continue to find value in these conversations. So I hope you've got your morning cup of, uh, mine is always coffee, but your favorite morning beverage, and can take a few minutes as we think this morning about a topic that I think a lot of us really are concerned about. And that is, how do we ensure that we have the outcome that we're looking for from our learning and development opportunities in terms of performance change? So we wanted to focus in on actually how learning happens for all of us. And so this really comes from a conversation that I had a few weeks ago. I was in speaking with a client, and the feedback was, we're really thinking about looking at our learning and development budget again because we don't know if we're getting the return on investment that we think we should. We understand it's important, but it seems like we put a lot of investment and don't see the return. We don't see things changing. We don't see the outcomes. And so I realized right after that, it seemed like I was in another meeting and another, and similar thoughts were expressed. So it makes sense for us this morning to revisit actually how learning happens as a result of our initiatives with our businesses, our organizations. But more importantly, how is it that we get performance change? How is it that we get the outcomes that we all so desperately need? I think the first step in that is to remember that in order to get performance change, learning just can't be a one and done. We can create the most fabulous learning opportunities, programs, courses, content. It can be terrific. If we really don't follow a process to build in how we're going to get that performance, it may fall flat and it may not meet our expectations. So I really chose the title Baking in Performance Change because it really is very similar to a recipe. Now, I am not, if I'm baking a cake, I have never claimed to be the best baker. But there are certain steps in a recipe that if we follow them will increase the likelihood that that cake is going to turn out. A couple of steps that I always look at that I go, oh, no, that's not really important. When they say sift the flour and the dry ingredients together, I'm going, I'm just going to stir it all up together. Does it really matter? So I may skip that step. Or when they say, get your refrigerated ingredients out and bring them to room temperature. I may skip that because I'm in a hurry and I just want to get the cake put together. And I think that's the perfect analogy sometimes to what happens with our training initiatives. We get in a hurry, we think, we do have the ingredients, we've got the training material, we've got the knowledge that we want to share and introduce to our employees and team members, but maybe we leave out some of those other steps. And so makes time or makes sense to take the time this morning to really take a deeper dive into that, because I think we all know that our learners need time to prepare for their training, for these opportunities, um, get their mind ready so that when the topic and the training, the learning takes place, they're ready for that. We also need to give them time to reflect on the information or on the process, and how are they going to be able to use this? Why does this matter to them? How is this going to help them? Then we want to practice it and figure out how they can apply these skills. So these are things that take time for the people in our development and our learning opportunities. So we can't just go and say, here's this great training opportunity, go forth and conquer. We need to reflect on, are we building these things into our solutions? So as we think about how we get to performance change, there really is a very important cycle that we need to constantly be thinking about. And it starts in that upper left-hand corner, actually, with the results. We want to think about, what is the result that we're looking for, the outcomes, or what is the behavior change that we hope our learners have as a result of this experience. And from there, we need to focus in on the learner's attitudes. So, how is it that we can set up that reflection period so that the learners say, you know what, I do actually need to improve this behavior or develop this skill or streamline this process. I want to do this. I can do this. I think all of us know that if we don't see the value in something, it's going to be really hard to move forward. And if we don't want to do it, we may be there physically, but are we really there 100% all in? So we want to give each learner that time to get the understanding and position their attitude to where they say, yes, I really do see that this is going to be a tremendous value to me. And it's at that point that the learning experience takes place. That's where they get knowledge. And, we can get knowledge from a lot of different ways. But the main thing we're looking for is, what is the methodology of this new skill or task? What is the process? What are different methods? What's the information that I need in order to change my performance? Probably the most critical piece in all of this is the next step, where we develop our skills. And we do that by experience, by actually practicing, by trying it out. That's where the learning takes place. The important thing to realize, though, is we need to coach our learners to make sure that they are learning it in the right way. I know, as a young girl, my mom always used to tell me, practice makes perfect. Well, practice actually makes permanent. And if we learn something the wrong way, if we get in those bad habits, it's very difficult to change. So as we are setting up this learning environment for our employees and team members, we want to make sure that we're giving them that feedback as they're learning, so that they're learning correctly, they're practicing correctly. And that's what's then going to give them the result of that performance change, of the outcomes that they identified earlier. So that's how we need to be considering and thinking about our learning opportunities as we are building these for our teams and our employees. So going back to our recipe, there is definitely a journey that we want to consider as we think about performance change. Um, if we just do one of these steps or two of these steps, We might get a product that's something like a cake. It's pretty good, but it's not that really the outcome, that perfect cake that we were looking for. And it really is the same thing with performance change. We need to make sure that we are thinking about and taking into consideration all the different things that impact what people actually learn and apply. And it starts on either end of the process. On the front end, we want to consider what is it that our learners actually need? What is going to help them be more successful in their roles? What do our organizations and our businesses need? That's step one. And make sure that we're addressing that. But before the actual learning experience, before the training takes place, if you will, the first goal is to raise awareness around the subject and the topic with our learners. So they're not walking into a training event cold turkey, never having thought about it, consider it, do any pre-work. We really want to raise the bar for them to have had some time to reflect and think on these things before we get together for the training event. So some suggestions for you. It could be self-reflection in terms of a self-assessment. It could be feedback from a 360 within the organization where they learn about some blind spots, perhaps, things they were not aware of. It could be from social cohorts and connections where people who are going to be involved in the learning get together and start to discuss or consider, how does this issue affect them? Or how does it impact the organization? What are things that they see that need to change? Again, just starting to raise the awareness, um, having a conversation with their immediate manager. This one is often overlooked, but before a training event, having that conversation where the learner says, these are the things I'd like to get out of this experience. And the manager says, these are things that I'd like to see you get out of the experience. And making sure we've got alignment there. That's really critical to ensure that we don't have any misunderstandings from either person on what we can take away from this learning opportunity. It could also be something as easy as some introductory videos, again, just to start talking about what it is we're going to be learning. And then after awareness, we actually have the learning experience. And whether that is in person, whether that is live instructor led, if we are online with a live instructor, if it's e-learning, however we look at this, this is where we get the knowledge, where we learn the methods, get the information. Also, in that training experience, things we don't want to forget, are we giving them the opportunity to practice, to experience, to try it out? It's so fascinating to me when we are given information or a new topic to learn or consider. First of all, we think about it. We say, oh, yeah, I understand it. When we have to write it down, it becomes even more clear to us and it starts to crystallize. But if we have to say something out loud and have to struggle to find the words and how to say it, that's when it really sinks in. And so we want to ensure that we are giving people that opportunity to practice in the learning experience. And then after that learning experience, we need to consider sustainment. And this is probably even more important. How do we keep the learning going? How do we sustain it so that this stays top of mind and people don't say, yeah, that was a great training event. If they have a manual, it goes on the shelf or in the drawer. How do they actually start to use the information? And so when we think about that, Are there ways that we can reconnect them to other participants and learners in their cohort so they can talk about this is how I'm applying the information? Ways to just continue to talk about the changes they're seeing, hold people accountable, report back on how they're using it. More importantly, how to address what challenges they're having and come up with strategies to apply these new skills. There is so much involved in building in performance change. We hope these are some ideas for you to consider as you're building your next learning and development solutions. Next week, come back and see us again on our Jumpstart as we start looking at things from a sales perspective. How is it that we keep our sales teams engaged when everything is changing? That'll be our topic next week in October the 11th. So between now and then, have a great week, everyone. And we look forward to seeing you next week on Dale Carnegie's Jumpstart.